Hey guys, welcome back to Project Bodybuilding. In today's video, I'm going to be doing a pose-by-pose analysis of the top call-out from this past weekend's very exciting, very competitive Empro Classic. This may have been the most controversial call of the year so far. William Bonac came from behind when everyone counted him out and won the show and a ticket to the Olympia. In most people's predictions, Beirut was second, if not being the favorite to win the show. And on show day, these guys had apples and oranges physiques, and that certainly helps fuel any doubts and arguments surrounding the show. And the actual scores were as close as possible. Beirut only lost by 1 point at prejudging and finals. Few judges did see him as the winner that day. So what I'm here to do today is break down the top two at the show, because at the end of the show, this was your two-man top call-out. We'll take a look at both prejudging and finals using two different sets of photos and angles in order to make this as objective as possible. With all that said, we have a very spicy topic to get into today, so let's go ahead and jump into today's video. If you guys like these types of videos, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more. Alright, let's start with the front double. And remember, I said we will be looking at both the prejudging and the finals using two different sets of photos. The photos I'm using for prejudging are the NPC News Online website photos. These are the official photos of the show. However, I don't think they're the best. They look great, but for a bodybuilding show to examine the details, they could be better along with the lighting, of course. So for the finals portions of the show, I'll use screenshots from the live stream where you can actually see the details better. And for scoring, I'll also be rewarding each guy 1 to 3 points for how well they score on a pose. If it was a nail biter, the winner will receive 1 point. If it was a clear dominating win, the winner will get 3 points. I won't be awarding a score for both prejudging and finals. I'll be looking at both, then calculating an overall score for the entire pose. Anyway, with that out of the way, we actually do have a 3-point win right out of the gate here. I simply do not see Bonac winning this one with what's going on in the midsection. It was always his Achilles heel, but it's bigger now. And we're just going to go ahead and go straight to finals because it doesn't really matter. Beirut doesn't win this pose on detail on one particular muscle group. He wins this because he's actually pleasing to look at. But here in this clearer finals photo, you can see his condition is okay. And that seems to be the consensus, that Beirut got better at finals, and I can definitely see that here. And he also just straight up has better lats, very solid arms, you can maybe even say better. Bonac's are a bit harder and peak more, but some fans out there will prefer Beirut's fuller looking arms. Beirut's weakest point also really isn't holding him back too much here, that of course being the legs. Even based on this clearer photo, neither guy has super deep cuts. And because Beirut is a lot taller than Bonac, Beirut can compensate for his lack of quad sweep because his overall leg size is comparable to Bonac's. But of course, do any of these things really matter? I mean, I suppose for margin, but this was always going to be a Beirut win. In my opinion, that waste is just too much for Bonac to win. And because Beirut is solid everywhere else, including the all-important arms department, and because he has fantastic shape himself, I have him winning this by 3 points. I don't see how I could ever give Bonac this pose. I can't come up with a single argument, and that's why it's a clear 3-point win. The front lat spread is basically the same deal. I don't think Williams' waist is as detrimental here, surprisingly, but his overall structure makes him DOA in this one. The waist is still wide, and between that and his overpowering arms and his overall narrowness, his lats aren't that apparent. His taper obviously isn't that good either. And look at Beirut over there. He's dwarfing Bonac, to be quite frank. He's bigger overall and is much wider. His chest also looks fuller and has good detail. His shoulders and arms are stacking up much better to Bonac's than you might expect, and Beirut also scores a huge win in the lats. This is shaping up to be another big win, but let's take a look at finals. Well, they both look worse here, to be honest. And both of these guys are posing to the judges, which are below them. And these pics are taken from a higher angle, which makes things look a bit weird, so keep that in mind. We can tell that most things are kept the same from prejudging though. Beirut clearly has an advantage structurally. He's taller and much wider. He also wins the chest, and I just straight up give him the arms and delts here. And of course, he wins in the lats. The only thing I give to Bonac are the legs. He has better sweeps proportionally and a little more depth to his cuts. However, I definitely don't think that small win in the quads is enough for me to make this even a 2-point win for Beirut. Again, what could possibly be Williams' argument in this one? He's narrow, the lats barely pop, he looks melted in the chest, and the waist is really wide. Even if you had Bonac winning the show, I think we can all agree that it wasn't because of these two poses. They are clearly going to Beirut. Bonac has never been the best in these shots. He's always had structural limitations, and this time is no different. Now this is where Bonac should start picking up some steam, the side and the back poses. They hide his waist and he is very complete and full top to bottom, so it's a good recipe for success. But call me crazy, I have Beirut by a decent amount from this angle in this particular photo. Bonac looks great, filled in and compact, which is a good thing, but Beirut is massive. Does Bonac win in the pecs here? No, Beirut's pecs are just bigger because he's bigger and he's showcasing good detail as well. Bonac has good detail in his pecs too, but he doesn't have the level of size nor fullness that Beirut has. Beirut is also outmassing him in the arm and delt, which is crazy as Bonac usually is. I'd give this area to Beirut. And finally in the side leg, again that is going to Beirut. He's bigger overall, with the greater hamstring drop and the crazy glute striations, something which cannot be found on Bonac's physique, mind you. To be honest, if I was just judging this pose by this one picture, I'd give this to Beirut by 2 points, bordering on 3. William is solid for sure, but Beirut just wins all these body parts and is bigger overall. Now the finals is a different story thanks to posing, and that was one of the big takeaways after the show. Beirut had bad posing, and I will discuss it more at the end. But we can see here that he's not nearly as impressive looking as as he was in the last pic. Bonac now looks more muscular overall because he's so stout and compact. I would say he also puts the pecs into his column now as well. Again, keep in mind that the angle we are looking at was not the angle that the judges saw, and that is ultimately what matters. And I bet that Beirut did look a lot more impressive to them when this photo was snapped compared to what we see here. However, I would still give this to Bonac. He looked really good in the last shot, he just got outmasked, but I wouldn't say that here. And after watching the footage on this one, because I'll be honest, I got a little stuck, I would give this overall to Bonac. But we can certainly not deny how big Beirut is and the good things he does. He straight up won the prejudging version, and across both photos he had an immense arm and delt, a fantastic side leg, and he does very well in the pecs. Again, he won those at prejudging. So even though I saw something different in the live stream, and going into this I thought it would be a bigger win, I only have Bonac here by 1 point. If he won prejudging, we could talk about something different, but if it's that close that it can change based on the photo, then I definitely don't think it's going to be a 3 or even a 2-point win. Now let's turn these guys around for the rear double, and I thought I'd have Bonac, but Beirut definitely has something to say about that. In the lower body, I think it's fairly close. They both have good sweep, dugout hams, and striated glutes. However, because Beirut was losing his balance in this one a lot, I'm going to give the edge to Bonac. You obviously can't see that from the picture, but for those of you that watch the show, you guys will know that Beirut made a lot of posing mistakes. So Bonac wins the lower body, narrowly. And in the back, honestly, again, it's only a narrow win, which really shocked me. Bonac does have those flying squirrel lats, meaning they insert really low, and he has a very filled in looking back top to bottom. Beirut's lower back is shallow on the other hand because his lats end higher up. But in terms of thickness and detail, it's actually fairly close. Beirut really does have a lot of good detail throughout the upper back. His delts and arms are also bigger than Bonac's just straight up. But I would give Bonac the arms because I like the peak on his biceps more. But Beirut would win the delts. And Beirut's back is also much wider than Bonac's, which does account for at least something even than the rear double. Now Bonac does have better detail. He's a little bit better because he has that density, maturity, and his skin appears to be thinner. However, this one is a lot closer than I expected it to be. So let's move on to finals. Now finals, this is a little more conclusive. I have Bonac in the lower body by even more than prejudging. It goes back to posing yet again. Beirut isn't flexing his hams here, and I think this pic may have been snapped at the same time when he was flickering in and out of the correct pose. And in the back, I have William here for sure now. Again, he is more filled in top to bottom, and he has a leg up on detail too based on this pic. Beirut still does have width, and he's alright in terms of thickness, but that other photo was much better for him. He still wins the delts and probably the arms based on this pic at least, but those things don't really matter when he's already lost 2 main components of the pose. I think with how close the last pic was, there is enough here to push Bonac over the edge. But by how much? Well, it's not a 3-point margin. The closeness from the prejudging photo made sure of that. I may even be slightly inclined to do a 1-point victory here. So I went back and forth, but I eventually went back and looked at some videos, and that definitely cemented me on a 2-point win. And if you go back and watch the same videos, you'll see why. Jam-packed with detail, more than the photos presented here for Bonac. But I do think Beirut holds up pretty well. And Bonac not winning this by 3 points does complicate his path to victory, because this is where he was supposed to make up massive ground. Beirut's back is tremendous though, and in these same videos, he looks pretty good. And here in these photos, he looked great too. So he's going to narrow Bonac's margin just slightly here. Unfortunately for William, the second back pose is heavily reliant on a good structure, so you have some good width. Bonac doesn't have a wide structure, and Beirut does, and that's kind of the end of the story. Beirut is so much wider overall, and in the lats, he is once again dwarfing Bonac. Beirut even has more detail with the thicker erectors and more pronounced traps. Bonac's back just seems to lose a lot of that thickness and density when he spreads his wings. He even has some type of injury or something going on in that left lat, which is slightly distracting. Compared to the last back pose, I may even have Beirut winning this one more. Nothing really changes when we go to finals either. I can confidently say now that Bonac does in fact pick up a small win on the lower body for the same reasons as the rear double, but Beirut maintains having the much wider back and the more detailed back as well. Now for the record, yes, I do consider this more convincing than Williams' win on the last back pose, at least per these pictures. But Bonac did win the lower body here, and that's a nice win to have. But once again, I'm asking myself, how can anyone have Bonac winning this one? Does he even get close to Beirut? I don't see it. I would go with a 3-point win here myself. I simply do not see Bonac's argument, even with the smaller win on the lower body included. But hey, a win is a win. And in the lower body, I do think it's fairly clear. And honestly, since Bonac won his back pose by 2 points, let's just go ahead and give this one to Beirut by 2 points. I really want to stress how nice I'm being to Bonac here though. Moving on to the side tricep, I think this is a closer win, but at the same time, I still see Bonac winning more times than not, if that makes sense. I think it's because Bonac really thrives on his attention to detail here. This is a pose that he's always hit really well, whether you like it or not. And I used to not like it, but now I do. I'm a sucker for that old school style of execution, and he doesn't mess it up. The calves are there, the side leg is still there, the midsection is surprisingly good, and of course he looks good in the arm, including the tricep. Honestly though, Beirut does have some good elements, he's just not hitting it as well. Again, and it's not super evident in these photos, or for those who watch watched the show would know that Behruz was breathing through his stomach quite a bit, and that's not something you can get away with here in this pose. This is all about staying streamlined while looking thick. And just tell me why Bonac is beating Behruz in the midsection. This shouldn't be happening, but Behruz is allowing it to. He still looks good because his waist is small, so even with this poor posing and belly breathing, he still looks pretty streamlined, but he could have gone that extra step. And honestly, locking in the abdomen may have even won him the pose, because he has other good elements. His side leg is big, although Bonac's is a little more mature and drier. Behruz's pecs are also really full, his delt is massive, and his tricep is solid. Not to mention he's bigger than Bonac, which gives him an advantage before they even pose. But Bonac is just too polished, and wins things like the tricep and the side leg, albeit narrowly. But add better presentation in there, and this win becomes even more clear. And it becomes even clearer at finals. It's not the best screenshot for Bonac, but you can see how much better his presentation and polish was. Especially because this same photo really shows how sloppy Behruz was with his posing. He's not showcasing a bubble gut, but he should be able to keep that core tight instead of letting it hang. This is a win for Bonac, but I still think Behruz has a lot going for him. So I did contemplate a 1-point win, but I do think it's a bit more clear than that now that I look back at it. And continuing with the theme on trying to make sure I'm not too harsh on Bonac, I'm going to make this one a 2-point win. I don't think we need to take too much time on the abs and thighs. If there was one argument for Behruz winning this show, it was the waist, and what is on full display here. Bonac's complete lack of taper, the wide waist, and the abysmal abs. And I know a lot of people want to talk about Behruz's posing, and I get it. Compared to Bonac, Behruz looked unprofessional. But what is William even doing? He hit his usual twisting oblique shot like once throughout the show, which means he was mainly doing what you see here, the head-on version. And what even is this? Can you even call it an abs and thighs? Bonac is literally refusing to flex his abs. There's zero crunching down going on here, and watch the videos too. I really don't know why he does this. Well, I guess I do know why he does, because if he did, he'd probably look even worse. Regardless, he was just so much better off doing the twisting oblique shot, and he really didn't utilize that. He chose to do whatever this was instead. And that makes this a default win for Behruz, a 3-point win. And I'm not even exactly thrilled for him in this one. He's pretty good upstairs, I suppose. He has thick lats tapering down to a much smaller waist, and of course the better abs. And his quads are okay. The same problems still persist though. He's bigger overall, but he lacks good sweep proportionally and deeper cuts. They aren't really as bad as you may have heard though. I still think they're respectable here. Again, it doesn't really matter, however. I'm not even going to include finals here. There's really no need. And finally, we have the most muscular. Now, we'll get to 2 variations for these gentlemen, but let's start with the hands clasped. As good as William used to be in this one, and as good as he still is, I have Behruz here. It's the width. Given how much wider he is compared to Bonac, that makes Behruz look so much more impressive. And it's not just the width. Behruz is just bigger and taller overall, and just by nature of being bigger and taller grants Behruz a win in the delts, the arms, and in the chest. He also wins the midsection, but that was self-explanatory based on the last pose. The only place Behruz doesn't win is in the quads. Bonac has those better sweeps proportionally and the better detail. Bonac stays winning the legs, of course, for all the same reasons. But overall, the legs are a drop in the bucket compared to the slew of other things that Behruz wins. It's not exactly a clean sweep for sure, but it's a clean win overall. Now for finals, we are looking at a different variation. They're now both hitting the crab variation, and it's flipped. I have Bonac now, but not as much as you think. Again, this used to be a killer shot for him. Both of these variations used to be. And currently here in the crab, he's still very solid. He has very round arms, delts, and the better chest. Behruz just doesn't have anything going on in his pecs. I don't even think he's flexing. However, his arms and delts are quite impressive. Both are bigger than Bonac's. I would just straight up give the delts to Behruz, but I think Bonac wins the arms slightly. Bonac, of course, also has the better legs. So overall, yeah, Bonac does win this one, but with Behruz's greater size, good arms, and delts, I don't think he's massively behind. In fact, I don't think Behruz loses this one as much as Bonac lost the last one. In the last variation, Bonac looked way too deflated and got outclassed everywhere. But Behruz doesn't let that happen here. So I know this is going to be an unpopular opinion, but I think Behruz has the slightly greater average between both of these poses, so he wins. Either way, it was going to be a 1-point win even if Bonac won this one, so it's not going to be super impactful because it was so close. But again, Behruz has the better average, he's just bigger and wider overall, and it's hard to argue those things for me. I think Bonac could still win this one. I see the argument mainly based on this variation here, but for now I have Behruz ending this portion of the comparison with a 1-point win. Now before we tally up the final score, let's take a look at the overall physique categories. I'll be looking at conditioning, muscularity, shape, and flaws. And again, each gentleman will receive 1 to 3 points based on how much they win each category by. Let's start with shape, and that's an easy one. If you give Behruz anything less than 3 points, you're delusional. Look at Bonac's waist, the front poses, so on. Need I say more? In conditioning though, I am going to give Bonac a point win. Now this is one of the main things we heard about Bonac coming out of this show. He was more detailed, and I do believe that is true, especially after looking at the video footage. He had much better muscle quality and separation overall. overall. However, I don't buy the claim that Beirut was also not peeled. Was he at his best? Absolutely not. His usual best is like 11 out of 10. This was like a 9.5, 9 out of 10. Still better than 80% of open pros. So I'm not going to give Bonac 3 points. I don't even necessarily want to give him 2 points, but I'm going to include what I heard from most people actually at the show and what I've seen from the video footage. And as I said, I'm really trying to be nice to Bonac, and since this was his main argument, let's give him 2 points. And Bonac is also going to get another win in the muscularity category, but this one is definitely a slim one. Bonac only wins this because he had the better muscle quality, and he's getting that old man muscle, and he had less gaps. He was more complete. He had a slightly better back, although this is a close area because he did lose one of the back poses. He did have the better legs, and overall, this guy is stout. He looks very filled in. However, Beirut was just straight up bigger overall and in several muscle groups. But of course, the quads were a big stain on Beirut's chances in this one, so I will give this to Bonac, but not by anything more than 1 point. And finally, the big thing I want to talk about is this flaws category. Now, this category is saved for things that aren't easily fit into any other category. Bad posing, injuries, just overall unsavory things about a physique. And what did we hear about this show? Bonac won on posing and maybe a little conditioning. And sure, Beirut did have bad posing, and really it's unforgivable. You should not be a pro and suck at posing. End of story. However, are we going to argue that Bonac also didn't have flaws? His waist and poor shape work him into the loss in the shape category for sure, but is that going far enough? I personally don't think so. His stomach, the entire abdomen just wasn't good, it was bad. He also made some posing mistakes too, like literally not hitting the abs and thighs, albeit I think that was intentional. He literally refused to do one of the poses correctly. So to be honest, I really contemplated giving Bonac just a 1-point win here. But again, since this is one of his main arguments for winning, I didn't want to discount that. I can't do a 3-point win for sure, but I can do a 2-point win here in the flaws category for Bonac. Alright, let's calculate the final scores. In my comparisons, I make the mandatory round worth 2/3 of the final score, leaving 1/3 for the overall physique categories. And if you add up these guys' scores in each and weight them accordingly, this comparison comes out with Beirut Tabani on top 58.5 to Bonac's 41.5. And that's really a close-ish win. We've certainly had closer on this channel, but just by the numbers, this is close based on my scale. However, when we pull back the curtain, was it really that close? Kind of. I thought I was very generous to Bonac where I could be. However, there were just some things I could not make excuses for. No matter how you slice this comparison, Bonac had massive gaps that we can all agree on. There is no way he is not losing the front double, front lat, abs and thighs, and even the overall shape category by 3 points apiece. Even those that think Bonac rightfully won the show can agree on that. But what about Bonac's argument? He won on a combination of very small things: his edge and conditioning, the back and side shots, and his presentation. Well, I personally don't think he did enough in all of these areas. He straight up lost a back pose, the side poses weren't majorly convincing, and his edge and conditioning, while fairly apparent, was not overwhelming. That leaves posing, and I'm sorry, but the IFBB needs to decide if this matters or not. I think it does. Like I said, there's certainly no excuse for poor posing at this level. However, with the IFBB literally not even judging posing anymore as its own category, and seemingly forgetting about it entirely, and only bringing it up in close scenarios is frustrating. And I literally agree that posing is very important. But come on, just judge posing across the board, but I digress. Beirut did have worse posing for sure. He got gassed quickly and was not hitting shots that well. Does that make up for Bonac bombing 3 shots entirely and not winning majorly anywhere? To me, no. Is Bonac slightly more complete? Sure. Was he more conditioned? Sure. Was his presentation slightly better? Sure. However, the shape was not there, and what have we learned from the IFBB recently? Shape is mattering more and more. We really saw this turning point in 2023. Nick Walker had Samson beat at the 2023 Arnold Classic on those bodybuilding qualities, but Samson ended up winning with a perfect score with what had to be his shape and shape alone. Nick was more complete and more conditioned. We also saw something similar at the literal Mr. Olympia. Derek Lunsford had slightly better shape than Hadi Chupin, but had more holes in his physique. Hadi had slightly worse shape, not bad though, but he was more complete back to front, top to bottom. But the shape on Derek and I guess the rear double pulled him over the finish line. This situation that we saw in Spain is literally the inverse of those I just noted. However, I do think this situation bears a striking similarity to this year's New York Pro. Martin Fitzwater had much better shape than Nick Walker, but Nick ultimately won on those bodybuilding qualities, and he won the show because of that, albeit by the same margin that Bonac won here, so very, very narrowly. So overall, I guess you can say both guys did deserve to win depending on what you weight more. I personally just hate the inconsistency in the judging. Are we awarding aesthetics more, or are we not? How much do they really matter? All these types of questions receive radio silence from the IFBB outside of Tyler Mannion's recaps. And even then, I think there's a good amount of flip-flopping going on there. And let's say we just weight things evenly like on my own bodybuilding scorecard. I really do think Beirut should have won here. Bonac's waist is too much and he didn't do enough in the back and side poses for me. And Beirut's had plenty of wins sprinkled in there. So overall, I do disagree with this decision here for a couple of reasons. I think it ranges from frustration with the shifting criteria and the shadiness of that, and also the fact that I just like Beirut more from just about every single perspective that bodybuilding is judged on, outside of slight losses in conditioning and completeness. Again, Bonac did have an argument to win, especially if you're looking at what happened in New York and this show and comparing the two. It just makes sense. I did not see that here at the Empro Classic. Well, that's going to do it for today's video. Sorry this one was so late, I had a lot of things come up, but this was a good show, so I just had to still put this one out. Anyway, how did you guys see this show? And what do you think about my takes in this video? What do you agree with, disagree with, and who do you think should have won the 2024 Empro Classic? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. And if you guys like these types of videos, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more. And finally, with all that said, I want to thank you guys for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.
Gotta get that Lexi, yeah.